The nervous system is a collection of nerves, the brain, and the spinal cord that monitor changes in our environment. It is made up of the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, the neurons around the body. Its function is to send messages to the brain about our environment and decisions that the brain makes to muscles and glands. Information is transmitted between neurons across gaps called synapses. When an electrical impulse reaches a synapse, it stimulates chemical messengers called neurotransmitters to be released from the first neuron, which travel to the second neuron. When the neurotransmitters bind with the receptor molecules on the second neuron transmits an electrical impulse, continuing the flow of information. There are three types of neurons: sensory neurons, which take in information from receptors and pass them on to the brain; relay neurons, which allow sensory and motor neurons to communicate; and motor neurons, which take in the processed decision from the brain and pass that information on to effectors, either muscles or glands, for that decision to be carried out. This pathway of information, receptors to sensory neurons to spinal cord to brain, then back to the spinal cord to motor neurons and then to an effector, is an example of a coordinated response, where the brain considers the decision before it is made. However, sometimes very quick decisions have to be made, sometimes for our survival or safety. These are known as reflex actions and do not pass through the brain. Instead, a decision is made in the spinal cord, and the action is carried out with the brain being informed afterwards. An example of a reflex action for safety is moving your hand away from a flame, as receptors detect extreme heat and a muscle very quickly pulls your hand away. Another example is pupil dilation in the eye, which controls how much light is let into the eye to ensure that we can see in all lighting conditions. A practical to test reflex actions and different people's speeds of reflex actions is the ruler drop test, where an individual holds their hand out next to a table and someone randomly drops a ruler and the individual attempts to catch it as quickly as possible. The eye is an example of a sense organ or receptor that takes in information for the brain to process, in this case, light and images. The main components of the eye include the cornea, a transparent layer on the front of the eye, the pupil, which is the hole that lets light into the eye, the iris, which controls the size of the pupil in pupil dilation to control the amount of light entering the eye, the retina, which is the back of the eye where light is refracted and where light is focused so that the optic nerve can carry it to the brain, the fovea, which is the focal point for light to be refracted to send the clearest image to the brain, the lens, which refracts light onto the retina so that the brain can process a clear image, and the suspensory ligaments and ciliary muscles, which control the shape of the lens to focus light onto the retina. In order to see objects which are both close to us and far away, and for all of these images to be clearly focused onto the retina, the eye undergoes a process called accommodation, where the ciliary muscles and suspensory ligaments change the thickness and height of the lens to control the extent to which light rays are refracted. When we look at something close to us, the ciliary muscles tighten and the suspensory ligaments relax, causing the lens to become short and fat, increasing the level of refraction. When we look at something far away, the ciliary muscles relax and the suspensory ligaments tighten, causing the lens to become tall and thin, decreasing the level of refraction. Two conditions that can affect the clarity of the image processed by the brain are myopia and hyperopia, more commonly called short-sightedness and long-sightedness respectively. Myopia occurs when light is refracted too much and it meets in front of the retina. It can be caused by a person's lens being too strong or the eyeball being too long. Myopia can be corrected with a concave lens that separates light rays and bends them away from each other. Hyperopia occurs when light is refracted too little and it meets behind the retina. It can be caused by a person's lens being too weak or the eyeball being too short. Hyperopia can be corrected with a convex lens that refracts light more, so it is focused onto the retina. The brain is the site of all the processing of information from receptors and sense organs. There are many different parts to the brain, each performing its own unique function. The hypothalamus acts to maintain homeostasis, secreting hormones to control body temperature, heart rate, mood and hunger, and controlling the secretion of hormones from the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland itself is known as the master gland, as it controls other glands in the body. The pituitary gland secretes growth hormones, thyroid-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and more to control body functions. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the brain, controlling our awareness, communication, language, memory, understanding, and more. The frontal lobe of our brain controls our most advanced cognitive functions, like reasoning, social understanding, and executive functions, made up of neurons and glial cells, the latter of which clears dead matter from the lobe. The occipital lobe is located at the back of the brain and processes all the visual signals from the eye. In blind people, the occipital lobe is still active, but acts instead to process sounds. This is known as neuroplasticity, where the brain adapts to complete a task that it was not initially designed for. The medulla oblongata is a part of your brainstem which connects the brain to the spinal cord. Damage to the nervous system usually prevents electrical signals from being carried to the CNS and decisions from the brain being carried to effectors. Damage to the peripheral nervous system can lead to inability to detect pain, numbness, and loss of coordination. However, the PNS has a limited ability to regenerate through the myelin sheath of neurons that can restore their function. Damage to the central nervous system can lead to loss of control of body systems, partial or complete paralysis, and memory loss or processing difficulties. Unlike the PNS, the CNS cannot regenerate itself, so damage to it is usually more severe. 3 scientists that worked on the nervous system were Pierre Paul Broca, von Helmholtz, and Camillo Golgi. Broca worked with patients who had brain damage, determining that different parts of the brain were responsible for different functions, and damage to these different parts had different consequences. Helmholtz measured the speed at which neurons can transmit information, up to 120 meters per second. Golgi used salt to discover what neurons looked like, forming the basis of our understanding of the nervous system. Damage to the nervous system can also be solved artificially through the use of stem cells. Both embryonic and adult stem cells can be used to replace damaged cells within the nervous system. Due to ethical concerns, adult stem cells are preferable to embryonic. However, before repairing the nervous system, its damage must be assessed. Equipment has flourished long since Broca's time, and now scientists have access to MRI and CT scans that can clearly visualize the region of the brain that has been damaged. Brain tumors can also affect the nervous system and can be treated by radiotherapy or chemotherapy.